Good afternoon, everyone that is here. First of all, we want to welcome the media that have allowed us this space to be able to communicate to you about the conference on the civil restoration and vital statistics. I want to believe that you're all aware that Ethiopia is hosting the 60th conference on civil restoration and vital statistics. This is a conference that involves the ministers. This is a conference program that was set up by ministers in 2010 to really look at the developments and the progress around civil restoration and vital statistics. As you know, civil restoration and vital statistics is the foundation, and it involves the data collection that in respect to the events of everyone, every citizen of a country, or everyone that exists within the territory of a particular country, to be able to collect several events over their period of their life, from the time they are born to the time when they actually leave this earth. So this particular conference that we're going to be having this year, first of all, I want to thank the government of Ethiopia for having accepted to host this particular conference. The Ethiopian government accepted to host this conference at really short notice, because initially this conference would have been held in Mozambique, but because of COVID situations, that was not possible. And the result of that, the conference was actually postponed from 2021 to 2022. And based on that, the Ethiopian government was willingly to take up the responsibility to host the conference. I must also mention that the first conference of ministers was actually held here. So it is like coming back home from 2012 to now. It's like coming back to Ethiopia, because this is where the conference itself was born. And therefore, we feel very honored that the government is able to accept again to continue honoring their responsibility, and also to be able to host this particular one. Now, the Conference of Ministers responsible for civil restoration has two parts to it. The first part of it involves the experts in civil restoration and vital statistics, but mainly the civil restoration, the civil registrars. So civil registrars sit down to discuss about the development around civil restoration in developments in the country on various issues. And that takes 2 to 3 days. And this particular time, they will be spending their time next week from Monday to 26th to discuss the development of civil restoration on the continent in the different countries, and come up with a very concerted resolution that they will be able to present to the ministers. And I'll come back to that. But what is the focus of this conference? The focus of this conference really is that what has been developed over the years, we've been focusing much more on the civil restoration, but also you realize that now we're talking about ID management. So it's the integrating, the strengthening of the civil restoration and ID management. Meaning that the civil restoration itself as a foundation is the foundation, meaning you collect data from children born at age 0 to the time when somebody actually is able to leave this earth. In other words, by the time they actually die. So you collect all their events over time, and it means all people in the country that are supposed to be registered. So who are the key players in the process of this? Of course, the Citizens and Immigration, Immigration and Citizen Service is responsible. Ministry of Health is responsible. The ID management authorities are responsible, because they have to have this integrated kind of approach to make sure that you have systems that talk to each other. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is particularly that. We want to believe that Ethiopia has made very good strides, very good progress, both in terms of putting the process of civil restoration and vital statistics, but also in issues of ID management. So we're looking forward to also not just to learn, but also to be able to take the practices, the best practice from Ethiopia to other countries, to be able to emulate what Ethiopia has been able to do. So we're looking forward to this conference, which is going to start next week on Monday. However, the ministers' conference has been postponed for purposes of ensuring that the experts are able to deliberate much better in terms of the issues that are required. And we're hoping that the ministers, part of the segment of the conference is going to be held in January. And I also needed to mention that the organization of this conference has 3 major players in it, in addition to Ethiopia as the host government that is hosting. But we also have the 3 other Pan-African institutions that are responsible, with the African Union, to which actually this conference belongs to, because they're the ones that and host the ministers themselves. Then we have the ECA, which is responsible for the expert part of the conference. So we are responsible as ECA to make sure that the technical part of the conference is taken care of. That is our responsibility as ECA. But of course, we don't do it alone. We work with other development partners. We call them the core group. the UN agencies, the networks that are in the foundations, and others that are interested in that area. We work them very closely, including World Bank, Paris 21, and so forth. They're part of that, people that we work with to make sure that there's success on that. And then the deliberation that comes out of that experts discussion, which is going to be next week, goes to the ministers for review, for consideration, and endorsement before it goes to the head of state. That's the process, that's how it works. So I thought I should mention that it is an arrangement of Pan-African institutions, which is the ECA, the African Union, the African Development Bank, but of course the host government takes the responsibility of making sure that it's a successful conference. And in this case, I think that's what the Ethiopian government has been able to demonstrate. And we are very, very pleased that we are getting the necessary support that is required from the Director General of the ICS for making all the arrangements. We are informed that a lot of committees have been put in place, so we are really looking forward to a successful conference going forward.
በዋናነት የሲቪል ሬጅስትሬሽን ኢን ቫይታል ስታቲስቲክስ በአፍሪካ ደረጃ የ6 ሚኒስትራል ኮንፈረንስን ኢትዮጵያ እንድታስተናግድ ጥያቄ ሲቀርብልን በአጭር ጊዜ ውስጥ ነው ተቀብለን ለማስተናገድ ፈቃደኛ ይሆን ነው። በዚህ ሂደት ውስጥ እንደምታውቁት ወሳኝ ኩነትና ቫይታል ስታቲስቲክስ ለህግ ላስተዳደርና ለስታቲስቲካል ጉዳዮች ያለው ጠቀሜታ ተተኪ አይተኬ ነው። ከዚህ አንፃር የዜጎችም ሆኑ ማንኛውም በቴሪቶሪያችን ውስጥ በእኛ በሀገራችን ውስጥ የሚኖሩ የሰው ዘር በሙሉ የመጀመሪያ ሰዋዊ እና ዲሞክራሲያዊ መብቶቹን ለማስጠበቅ መሰረት ነው። ከዚህ በመለስ ለጉድ ጋቨርናንስ ወይም ደግሞ መልካም አስተዳደርን ለማስፈን ከዚህ የስርዓት የሚገኙ መረጃዎች ያላቸው ጠቀሜታ ከፍተኛ ነው። ከዚህ በተጨማሪ ደግሞ ለሚኖሩን ማንኛውም ስትራቴጂካዊ እቅዶች እንደዚሁም ለሚተገበራቸው ፖሊሲዎች በግብዓትነት የምንጠቀምበት የስነ ህዝብ መረጃ እንደመሆኑ መጠን አይተኬ ሚናነቱ ከፍተኛ ነው። ከዚህ አንፃር እነዚህን ጥቅሞች ለዜጎችም ሆነ ዜጎች ላልሆኑ በአገራችን ለሚኖሩ ሰዎች በሙሉ ተጠቃሚ እንዲሆኑ ከዚህ ስርዓት ተጠቃሚ እንዲሆኑ ሀገራችን ኢትዮጵያ ህጋዊ ከማድረግ አንፃር ይሄንን በአዋጅ መጀመሪያ ላይ በ2004 ቀጣይም በማሻሻው 2009 ላይ በአዋጅ ጸድቆ ለዚህም ተግባራዊነት ኢሚግሬሽንና ሲቲዝንሺፕ ሰርቪስ የኢሚግሬሽንና ዜግነት አገልግሎት አስተባባሪ ተቆጣጣሪ እና ደጋፊ አሰስ ሰፖርተር ተቋም ተደርጎ ተመስርቷል። ያንን መሰረት አድርገን ለዜጎች ብቻ ሳይሆን ለማንኛውም ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ለሚኖሩ የሰው ዘር በሙሉ ይህን አገልግሎት እንዲያገኙ ተደራሽ ተደርጓል። በዚህ ሂደት ውስጥ እስካሁን ድረስ ባለው ከ90% በላይ የምዝገባ ጣቢያዎች ሽፋን አለን። ይህም ማለት ከ16000 በላይ የሚበልጡ የምዝገባ ጣቢያዎችን አቋቁመን እየሰራን እንገኛለን። እነዚህ የምዝገባ ጣቢያዎች በተለያዩ የአስተዳደራዊ እርከኖች በወረዳና በቀበሌ ደረጃ አሉ። ከዚህ በተጨማሪ በጤና ተቋማቶች አሉ። ከዚህም በተጨማሪ ደግሞ የሀገራችንን ከለላ ፈልገው የመጡ ስደተኞችም ሆኑ ጥገኛ ጠያቂዎች በየካምፖቹ ይሄንን ምዝገባ ኢትዮጵያ ትሰጣለች ማለት ነው። ይሄ ኮንፈረንስ እንደ አፍሪካ በዋናነት እነዛን 3 ነገሮችን ለማሳካት አንደኛ የሰዋዊና ዲሞክራሲያዊ መብቶችን ከመጠበቅ አንፃር፣ ሁለተኛ የልማት ግቦቻችንን ከማሳካት አንፃር፣ በዚህ ሁሉ ውስጥ ደግሞ መልካም አስተዳደርን በማስፈን ሂደት ውስጥ ያለው ጠቀሜታ ከፍተኛ ከመሆኑ አንፃር እነዚህን ጠቀሜታዎች እንዲገኝ በማሰብ ከሌሎች የልማት ግቦች ጋር ተሳስሮ እየተሰጠ ይገኛል ማለት ነው። ከዚህ ረገድ አንፃር ነው እንግዲህ ኢትዮጵያ ብቻ ሳትሆን እንደ ኢትዮጵያ ብቻ ሳይሆን እንደ አፍሪካ ማሰብ ስላለብን አፍሪካም እንደ አፍሪካ ማንም ሁሉም የሚታወቅባትን አፍሪካን ከመፍጠር አንጻር ሲቪል ሬስቶሬሽን ያለው ማንም የሚረሳ ሪኮግናይዝ ያልተደረገ የማይታወቅ የሰው እንዳይኖርበት ከማድረግ አንጻር ከ10 ዓመት በፊት የአፍሪካ የመሪዎች ጉባኤ ባስቀመጠው አቅጣጫ መሰረት ከመሪዎች ጉባኤ በመቀጠል የሚካሄድ ኮንፈረንስ ነው። አሁን ለሁለተኛ ጊዜ ኢትዮጵያ መልሳ እያዘጋጀች ነው ማለት ነው። ይህንን በማድረግ ሂደት ውስጥ ሁሉም ሰው የሚታወቅባት ኢትዮጵያን ለመገንባት ብሎም የነገዎቿን አፍሪካ የምናስባትን አፍሪካ ለመፍጠር በጋራ እንድንቆም በማሳሰብ የሚዘጋጅ የሚከናወን ኮንፈረንስ ነው ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ በዋናነት ኮንፈረንሱ ይሄንን ነው የሚመለከተው። ምናልባት አብሮን ከጤናም ስላሉ ከጤና ጋር እና ከስታቲስቲክስ ጋር ብዙ በቅንጅት የሚሰሩ ስለሆነ ከጤና ፐርስፔክቲቭ ያለውን ደግሞ አቶ ናውድ እንዲያስረዱን ለእነሱ ልልቀቅ።
እሺ እንግዲህ በተለይ እነዚህ ወሳኝ ኩነት ብለን ከምንላቸው ውስጥ ሁለቱ ወሳኝ ኩነቶች መሰረት ናቸው ተብሎ የሚታሰቡት በተለይ ውልደትና ሞት የሚከሰቱት በጤና ተቋማቶች እንደመሆኑ በተለይ ጤና ትልቅ ሮል ይኖረዋል። ይሄንን መረጃ ከመሰብሰብ አንጻርና መነሻ ከማድረግ አንጻር ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ ጤና ሚኒስቴር እንግዲህ ቅድም በተጠቀሰው አዋጅ ውስጥ እንደ አንድ ኃላፊነት ተደርጎ ለጤና ሚኒስቴር የተሰጠው በተለይ የሞትንና የውልደትን የማሳወቅ ኃላፊነት ለጤና ሚኒስቴር ሰጥቶታል። ይሄ ኃላፊነት ከተሰጠበት ጊዜ አንስቶ ከሚመለከታቸው ተቋማቶች ጋር በትብብር በመሆን አጠቃላይ የጤና ውስጥ የሚወለዱ ህጻናቶችን የማሳወቅና በጤና ተቋማቶች ውስጥ የሚሞቱ ሰዎችን የማሳወቅ ኃላፊነትን ወስዶ ይሄንን የማሳወቅ ስራ የመስራት እየሰራ ይገኛል። እንግዲህ በተለይ በሀገር ውስጥ ይሄ ትልቅ ኮንፈረንስ ነው። በሀገር ውስጥ እንዲህ አይነት ኮንፈረንሶች መከናወናቸው በተለይ ገና በጅምር ደረጃ ላይ ያለ ስለሆነ ስራው ወይም ደግሞ ገና ብዙ ርቀት መሄድ ያለብን ስራ ስለሆነ በተለይ ከሚመጡት ተሳታፊዎች ማለት ነው ከተለያዩ ሀገራቶች ከሚመጡ ተሳታፊዎች ብዙ ኤክስፒሪየንሶችን ከመማር አንጻር ማለት ነው እንደ ሀገር ትልቅ ሮል ይኖራል ብለን እናስባለን። ስለዚህ ከዚህም ለመማር እኛ በጣም ዝግጁ ነን ብለን እናስባለን። ያ ብቻ ሳይሆን ደግሞ እኛም በተለይ በሶስቱ መስሪያ ቤቶች የሚመለከታቸው ተቋማቶች መካከል ያለው ቅንጅትና ከዛ በተጨማሪ ደግሞ እንደ ጤና ሚኒስቴርና በጤና ሚኒስቴር ጤና ተቋማቶቻችን መካከል የተጀመሩ ጅምሮች እንደ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ሼሪንግ ለሌሎች ሀገራቶች በአጭር ጊዜ ውስጥ የተሰሩ ስራዎችን ማቅረብ ይቻላል ብለን እናስባለን። ስለዚህ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ሼሪንጉ ልምድ መለዋወጡ ትልቅ ጠቀሜታ ይኖረዋል ብለን እናስባለን። ስለዚህ እንደዚህ አይነት ኮንፈረንሶች መደረጋቸው ለእኛ ትልቅ ጠቀሜታ ይኖራል ብለን እናስባለን። በዚህ ሁኔታ ሁላችንም ዝግጁ ሆነን የሚመጡትንም እንግዶቻችንን በአግባቡ አስተናግደን ለመሸኘት ዝግጁ ነን ማለት ነው። እናመሰግናለን።
From civil restoration, first of all, as you have heard already, is a governance issue. Civil restoration and vital statistics is a governance issue because it talks about planning. You can only be able to plan if you know the people that are being born, are registered, you'll be able to know how many of those are going to go to school, how many of those are going to be processing or rather going through their process up to the time they die. So to do that, you need the information of how many children have been born in a year or in a particular time, in a particular place. If you have that information, you already know how many vaccines do we have to buy for these children who have been born. What kind of medication do we need? What is expected lifespan for these kids when they're age 5? What kind of medication do we need to provide? So information is only provided from the civil restoration and vital statistics because you have that information. The kids go into school. You now begin to plan. These kids were born in 2022. We know by the age 6 they're going to go into primary school. What kind of schools do we want? So you begin to plan for them to go into school because you know that these are the kids that are being born. So you begin to plan for them. Then they go into the university. Similarly, you make the planning. Then there's the issue of employment. You already know that we have this cohort that is growing by age so-and-so, they will be required to go into employment. The governments begin to plan. So it's a governance issue. It's an issue about planning. It helps to come up with a much more broader way of understanding the kind of national development plan that needs to be put in place to respond for these needs. That's one. But we also have two agendas, the Sustainable Development on SDGs, which is 2030 Agenda, and the Agenda 2063. The data that goes into informing the SDGs is about leaving no one behind and be able to plan properly. It means 65% that data is derived from civil restoration goes to inform SDGs. So if we don't get the civil restoration clearly and properly, it means even attaining SDGs becomes a problem because you don't have the data to be able to inform the SDGs. You don't have the data to be able to inform Agenda 2063. And this is why it is important that you have a very strong civil restoration vital statistical system in a country that will be able to also inform those processes, but also begin to form a population register. Because then you have information about the population over the years. And you're able to check, as people are registered, they're coming in, those who are dying, you're able to control that because you know who is being born and who are dying. Because they're registered. If a child is born today, a child is registered. He goes into school, the child dies. Information says, this child has a unique number, this child has died, or this person has died. You can only be able to do that through a process that is functional, that is holistic, and compulsory for everyone to be registered. That is the only way you can do it. So I thought maybe I should talk about the objectives and the purposes of the civil restoration, that it is not just being done for the purposes to inform the government process in the planning, but also to inform the other regional processes in terms of the frameworks, Agenda 2030, and also Agenda 2063. Thank you, Gigi.
How many African states are expected to participate in this conference? How much of them are you expecting? And what are the expected outcomes of this conference? What are you expected to? What are the expected results or outcomes at the end of the conference? Thank you.
What we expect at the conference is all members of the AU, all member countries of AU expect to participate. So we expect the Conference of Ministers itself, which is, as I said, it's been moved a little bit by a couple of weeks. It is all members of AU, and that they will come with their experts. And these experts are the ones that are coming in now, starting from Monday, arriving tomorrow. So all member states and also the experts themselves, they are accompanied by other people that are also involved in civil restoration at country level. In terms of outcome, I think what we expect to read out of this conference is two things. One, I think we all know what happened when we were faced by COVID. During the COVID, if perhaps you are not aware, what we saw during the COVID, our systems were vulnerable. They were affected. People were not able to go to the registration place because, first of all, the person who is taking the registration is not there because they're scared to go to the office because of fear of COVID. The mother who has given birth is not able to the conference to go there because they're fearing that they'll get infected because of the COVID. Maybe the baby will get COVID. So that in itself created a problem that you have births that were occurring which were not being registered. People died during COVID. Some of the deaths, people were buried without any registration because there was no registrar. The registrar was not there in the area where they are. And they didn't have time because sometimes they rushed over to just go and bury these people. Now we're saying, can we come up with a system that is resilient and agile enough to be able to respond to this? One way to do that is to digitalize the system, is to digitalize, making system to have a process which allows them to be able to collect information without physically being there. Maybe a baby is born, can we use the telephone? So digitalization, technology, that's the whole idea. So is the integration or strengthen the system by making sure that you have systems that are interoperable and that are agile enough, and you're able to use the modern technology to collect information without having to go and see the registrar. So one of the outcomes really is that we're expecting that there will be a recommendation, a strong recommendation of digitalizing the civil restoration systems across the countries so that they can be able to respond in good time. Do away with the paperwork so that things can actually be obtained through the technology that's being available. That's one. And the second part of it is that we want to see a situation where countries can begin to learn from each other, good practices, and that is important. If you look at Ethiopia, there are certain things countries can learn, but there are also other things Ethiopia can learn from other countries. So one of the outcomes there would be, what are the best practices? What can we use going forward to be able to improve our system? So broadly speaking, those are some of the things that we expect to come out of there. But of course, there are much more detailed other things that would come out of there as outcomes for the conference, and in particular for this experts group meeting that's coming next week.
ምን ያህል የሚሳተፉ ለሚለው ሁሉም አፍሪካ ሀገራቶች በዋናነት የወሳኝ ኩነትንና ስታቲስቲክስን የሚመሩ አይዲ ማኔጅመንትን የሚመሩ እና ሄልዝን የሚመሩ ተቋማት ኃላፊዎች ይገኛሉ። ከዛ በተጨማሪ ደግሞ ፓርትነሮች አሉ። ዓለም አቀፍ አህጉር አቀፍና አገራዊ ፓርትነሮች እዚህ ላይ የሚሰሩ ይሄን በመደገፍ የሚታወቁ ተቋማቶች አሉ። እነዚህ ተቋማቶችም ተሳታፊዎች ናቸው ማለት ነው። እስካሁን ባለው ዳታ ከ600 በላይ ተሳታፊዎች ይመጣሉ። ኤክስፔክት የሚደረገው እስከ 800 ተሳታፊዎች በአጠቃላይ ይገኛሉ ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ የሚመጡት ከአፍሪካ ብቻ ሳይሆን ከአጠቃላይ ከዓለም በሙሉ ነው የሚመጡት ማለት ነው። ቅድም እንዳልነው በዩኤን የሚታቀፉ አሉ፣ ኤንጂኦ ሆነው ፓርትነር እዚህ ላይ የሚሰሩ ይህንን ከመደገፍ አንጻር የሚሰሩ ተቋማቶችም አሉና እነዚህ ኦርጋናይዜሽኖች የወከሏቸው ኃላፊዎች በሙሉ ነው የሚመጡት ማለት ነው። ከዛ በተጨማሪ ኤክስፔክት የሚደረገው በደንብ ገልጾታል። አክቹአሊ አንደኛው ምንድነው ቻሌንጅ ያለብን እንደ አፍሪካ እያንዳንዳችን ቻሌንጆቻችንን ዲስከስ እናደርጋለን፣ እንወያያለን። ምንድነው ተግዳሮቶቻችን? ከተግዳሮቶቻችን ተነስተን ደግሞ ጥሩ ኤክስፒሪየንሶቻችን ለተሞክሮቻችንን ሼር የምናደርግበት መድረኮች አሉ ማለት ነው። ይሄም ብቻም ሳይሆን ፓርትነርሺፕም የምንፈጥርበት ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ ተጋግዘን የምንሰራበትን አዘ ሴም ታይም አፍሪካን ለማገዝ የሚመጡ ፓርትነሮችንም ደግሞ የምናገኝበትና እነሱንም ለዓላማችን የምናሰልፍበትን ወይ ሴት እናደርጋለን። በዛ ውስጥም ተጠቃሚ እንሆናለን ማለት ነው። በዚህ ሁሉ ውስጥ ደግሞ ዘ ዌይ ፎርዋርድ በቀጣይ ምን ማድረግ አለብን የሚለውንም እንደ አህጉር ምክንያቱም ይሄ ሁለት ነገር ነው። ሰስተነብል ዴቨሎፕመንት ጎል 2030 ሰስተነብል ዴቨሎፕመንት ጎል የዘላቂ ልማት ግቦች ጋር ይተሳሰራል አንደኛ። ሁለተኛ ደግሞ የምንፈልጋት አፍሪካ በሚለው ማዕቀፍ ውስጥ የ2063 አጀንዳም መልስ ነውና ለነዚህ ለሁለቱ መዳረሻ የሚሆኑ ነገሮችን ካሁኑ እያሻሻልን እያስተካከልን ከመሄድ አንጻር መሰረት ነው ካለን ይሄ ዳታ መሰብሰብ፣ ይሄ መረጃ መሰብሰብ፣ እነዚህ መረጃዎች ደግሞ በዋናነት አንድን ግለሰብ ሰብአዊና ዲሞክራሲያዊ መብቱን ከማስጠበቅ እስከ ጉድ ገቨርናንስ የተሻለ አገልግሎት እስከሚያገኝ ድረስ የምለው ለዛ ግብአት የሚሆን መረጃ ነው እስካለን ድረስ በዋናነት ዘመናዊ ስርዓተ መንግስቶችንም በመፍጠር የበለጸገች አፍሪካንም በመፍጠር ሂደት ውስጥ የሚጫወተው ሚና ከፍተኛ ከመሆኑ አንጻር በዚህ ልክ ተባብረን እንደ አፍሪካ ጎሎችን የምናስቀሴት የምናደርግበት ያስቀመጥናቸውን ጎሎች ደግሞ እንዴት እናሳካለን የሚለውን የምንተባብረን የምንወያይበትና ለተግባራዊነቱ የምንተጋበት መድረክ ይሆናል ማለት ነው። በዋናነት ኤክስፔክት የሚደረገው ይሄ ነው። ከዚህ በፊት የነበሩት 5 ኮንፈረንሶች ከመጀመሪያው ኮንፈረንስ ጀምሮ እየተደረገ የመጣው ይሄ ነው። አሁን በዋናነት የመንግስታት ቁርጠኝነትንና ዲጂታላይዜሽንን መሰረት አድርጎ የምንወያይበትና መንግስታቶች ተገቢውን ትኩረት ለሲቪል ሬጅስትሬሽን እና ቫይታል ስታቲስቲክስ ስርዓት ተገቢውን ትኩረት የሚሰጡበት ሊደርሺፑ ተገቢውን ትኩረት እንዲሰጥ አንደኛው አጀንዳ ነው። ሌላኛው ግን አስ ኤኔብለር አስቻይ ደግሞ ቴክኖሎጂን ከመጠቀም አንጻር አሁን ያሉ ማኑዋል አሰራሮች አሉ። እነዚህ ማኑዋሎች አሰራሮች ግን በቀላሉ ተደራሽ የሚሆንበት አቬል የምናደርግበት ሰርቪሱን ተደራሽ የምናደርግባቸው መንገዶች ምንድናቸው? በዚህ ሁሉ ሂደት ውስጥ ደግሞ አጋዥ ኃይሎቻችንን እነማን ናቸው? እነሱ ጋር አብረን የምንሰራበትን ኤክስፔክት አድርገን ነው ኮንፈረንሱ የሚካሄደው። በዋናነትም ኮንፈረንሱ የሚገኙት ጠቀሜታዎች እነዚህ ናቸው ማለት ነው።